Let's be real for a second. You think you're smart, you think you can see through lies, spot a manipulator a mile away, and that no one could ever get one over on you. Cute. Now, tell me, have you ever bought something you didn't need because a salesperson just got you? Dated someone who, in hindsight, had more red flags than a bullfighting arena? Loaned money to a friend who swore they'd pay you back next week and now conveniently has amnesia? Trusted someone who turned out to be the exact opposite of who they claimed to be? Yeah, thought so. Here's the cold, hard truth. You are way easier to manipulate than you think. And if you don't believe me, that just proves my point. You have weak spots. We all do. And guess what? There are people out there who specialize in finding them. People who don't feel guilt, don't care about consequences, and will use every trick in the book to control you. Whether it's for money, power, sex, or just the thrill of watching you squirm. These people don't argue. They convince. They don't fight. They maneuver. And by the time you realize what's happening, they're already 10 steps ahead, leaving you to wonder how the hell you let this happen. Welcome to Surrounded by Psychopaths. This book isn't here to make you feel warm and fuzzy. It's here to wake you up, to show you how these people operate, how they get inside your head, and, most importantly, how to stop them before they tear your life apart. So sit up, pay attention, and for your own sake, drop the ego. Because right now, you are an easy target. And if you don't learn how to fight back, you will lose. Introduction. Meet Thomas Erikson. He's the guy who wrote Surrounded by Idiots, a book that basically confirmed what you've always suspected. Most people are terrible at communication, but after the success of that book, he realized something worse. Some people aren't just bad at communication, they use it as a weapon. That's what led to this book, Surrounded by Psychopaths, where Erikson blows the lid off something we all need to wake up to. Not everyone around you has good intentions. Some people, they don't care about you, your feelings, or your future. They see people the way a chess player sees pieces, something to move around, use, or sacrifice for their own gain. And if you think this is some rare, once-in-a-lifetime kind of thing, nope. Erikson lays out the cold, brutal truth. There are way more psychopaths out there than you think. In fact, you've already met some. Maybe you work with one. Maybe you live with one. Hell, maybe you're dating one right now. This book isn't here to make you paranoid. Okay, maybe a little. It's here to wake you up, to give you the tools to recognize when you're being played, to help you fight back. Because make no mistake, psychopaths thrive on people's ignorance. And the biggest mistake you can make, thinking you're too smart to fall for it. What this book will teach you. Erikson builds on his color-coded DISC system from Surrounded by Idiots, breaking down human behavior into 4 types. Red, dominant, aggressive, loves control. Yellow, charismatic, social, loves attention. Green, stable, patient, hates conflict. Blue, logical, detail-focused, loves rules. And then he drops the bomb. Psychopaths don't fit into this system at all because they don't have their own personality. They steal yours. They mirror you, study you, and use what they learn to control you. And the worst part? You'll trust them. You'll think, wow, they just get me. And by the time you see through the act, it's too late. That's why you need this book. Not just to spot them, but to beat them at their own game. So, if you've ever wondered, how do manipulators get inside people's heads? Why do some people seem immune to toxic relationships while others fall for them repeatedly? What's the difference between a bad person and a full-blown psychopath? And most importantly, how do I make sure I never get played again? Then keep listening, because it's time to stop being the victim and start being the one who sees it coming. Welcome to Mindful Reads Hub. Let's get started. Chapter 1. What actually is a psychopath? You think you know what a psychopath is? You don't. You think they're just serial killers, bloodthirsty lunatics in ski masks, or creepy guys in basements? Cute. That's the Hollywood version. In reality, the most dangerous psychopaths wear suits, smile at you, shake your hand, and ask about your weekend. And before you know it, they've bled you dry, financially, emotionally, mentally, without ever lifting a knife. Psychopaths aren't out to kill you, they're out to use you. They don't need weapons because they are the weapon. Their charm is their bait, their words are their trap, and your trust, That's the kill shot. Thomas Erikson is not here to sugarcoat things. Psychopaths exist. They are everywhere. And worst of all, you probably already know one. The problem is that society has diluted the term psychopath so much that it's lost all meaning. People throw it around like it's an insult. Ugh, my ex was such a psycho. Or, that boss is a total psychopath. But what Erikson makes crystal clear in this chapter is that a real psychopath is not just a jerk, not just an aggressive person, and definitely not just someone you don't like. A real psychopath is something much worse. Psychopathy is not a mental illness. It's not temporary insanity, depression, or some emotional breakdown. Psychopaths are fully aware of what they're doing, and they do not care. You want to know what a true psychopath is? It's someone who feels zero guilt, remorse, or empathy for their actions, sees people as tools, not human beings, lies so effortlessly they could make you question your own name, uses charm like a weapon, making you believe they're your best friend, your dream partner, or your only hope, plays the victim so well that even when they destroy lives, they somehow convince people that they're the ones who've been wronged. And here's the worst part, they are incredibly difficult to spot. Erikson brings up the work of Dr. Robert Hare, one of the world's top psychopathy researchers, who created a checklist of psychopathic traits. He warns that psychopaths are a lot more common than you think. Studies estimate that at least 2% of the population are full-blown psychopaths, but when you include people with strong psychopathic traits, that number jumps significantly. Now, 2% might not sound like much, but let's do some quick math. If you live in a city of 1 million people, that means 20,000 of them are psychopaths. That's 20,000 people walking around with zero conscience, zero empathy, and a 100% willingness to manipulate and use others for their own benefit. Still think you haven't met one? Psychopaths don't have the same emotional wiring as the rest of us. They don't feel fear the way you do, and they definitely don't feel guilt. You know that sinking feeling in your stomach when you lie or do something wrong? That internal voice that tells you to stop? They don't have that. This is why psychopaths are so good at what they do. They can look you dead in the eye, lie straight to your face, and never flinch. They can ruin your life and sleep like a baby. To illustrate how terrifyingly common this is, Erikson shares a chilling real-life example. An old man, kind, generous, wealthy, marries a woman with 5 adult children. When he dies, she inherits over $1 million and decides to split it evenly among her children. Within 3 months, one of her sons has scammed his own mother and siblings out of nearly all the money. Just one sister refuses to give in. She's the only one immune to his tactics. What does he do? He threatens her with extreme violence, and when she still won't back down, he shrugs, disappears, and vanishes with the money. No remorse, no looking back. That's a psychopath. And don't think for a second that you'd be immune to someone like this. Psychopaths thrive on people's belief that they're too smart to be manipulated. You think you'd see it coming? You wouldn't. Not at first. Not until they've already taken what they wanted and moved on to their next victim. The scary part? They don't target strangers. They go after the people closest to them. Family, friends, co-workers, romantic partners, because that's where the real power is. That's where the trust is. And once they have your trust, you're done. Psychopaths don't just trick people. They rewire your reality. They make you doubt your own instincts, second-guess your own decisions, and question whether you're the problem. And once they've completely eroded your sense of self, that's when they strike. Erikson hammers this point home. If you want to protect yourself, you need to accept that psychopaths are out there. You need to stop assuming you'd recognize them easily. And most importantly, you need to learn how to fight back before you become their next meal. Key takeaway. Psychopaths don't have emotions like you do. They don't feel guilt, they don't feel remorse, and they see your kindness as weakness. If you think you're too smart to be manipulated, you're already their next victim. Chapter 2. Protecting yourself. A basic defense against psychopaths. You think you're safe? You think you'd never get manipulated? That you'd see it coming? You think you're too smart, too skeptical, too on guard to fall for a psychopath's tricks? Wrong. Because the moment you think that, you're already their next victim. Psychopaths don't force you to do anything. They don't hold a gun to your head or tie you to a chair. They don't need to, because they are playing an entirely different game. And unless you wake up to it, you're just another pawn waiting to be sacrificed. That's where this chapter comes in. Thomas Erikson isn't here to hold your hand and whisper that everything will be okay. No, he's here to tell you that you need to wake up and start protecting yourself now. Because if you don't, psychopaths will tear through your life, your relationships, and your self-worth like a wrecking ball. If you're already tangled up with a psychopath, it might be too late. Getting out is going to take mental strength you don't even know you have yet. But if you're lucky enough to still be on the outside looking in, then pay attention, because Erikson lays out the 3 crucial defenses that could save your entire damn life. First, you need to increase your self-awareness. You think you know yourself? You don't, because if you don't understand your weaknesses, someone else will, and they will use them against you. If you're desperate for approval, if you're a people pleaser, if you're too trusting, a psychopath will see that before you even realize you're in trouble. Psychopaths don't have emotions, but they sure as hell know how to read yours. They test you, throwing out little manipulations to see how you react. Do you get flustered when they praise you? Do you struggle to say no? Do you let things slide when you should be putting up boundaries? If so, congratulations. You just failed the test. And now, they own you. Second, you need to learn how to recognize psychopathic behavior, because you can't fight back against something you don't even see happening. A psychopath is never going to walk up to you and say, "Hi, I'm here to manipulate the hell out of you." No, they're going to be charming. They're going to seem helpful, charismatic, and maybe even a little too good to be true. They'll mirror your values, your interests, your fears, until you start to trust them. And the second you do, game over. Erikson points out that psychopaths thrive on predictability. And guess what? Most people are painfully predictable. You like people who are nice to you. You trust people who seem relatable, and when someone shows you a little attention, you want to believe they mean it. But psychopaths, they don't mean any of it. They're not your friend, they're not your mentor, they're not your soulmate, they are hunting you, and the second you let them in, they will gut your life for their own gain. Third, and most importantly, you need to decide how much you value your own worth and self-respect. Look, you probably think you have self-respect. You think you'd never let someone walk all over you. But let's be real. How many times have you ignored red flags because you didn't want to seem rude? How many times have you let someone push your boundaries because maybe they didn't mean it that way? That's exactly what a psychopath wants. They thrive on people who second guess themselves, who hesitate, who keep making excuses. Because if you won't stand up for yourself, then why the hell would they stop pushing you around? Psychopaths don't go after strong, confident people. They go after the ones who are unsure of themselves, the ones who lack confidence, the ones who are easier to manipulate. And if that stings a little, good. That means you're finally starting to wake up. If you want to protect yourself, you need to get real about your own vulnerabilities, because the strongest defense against a psychopath is knowing exactly who the hell you are. So let's sum this up. If you think you'd never get manipulated, you're already in trouble. If you don't know your own weaknesses, a psychopath will find them for you. If you ignore red flags, you're making their job way too easy. If you don't fight back, you're just another victim waiting to happen. This is not a game. This is your life, your mental health, and your future. Psychopaths are out there, and they are waiting for someone just like you, someone who isn't paying attention. So, are you going to wake up and start protecting yourself, or are you going to keep pretending that this could never happen to you? Because trust me, it already has. Key takeaway: your best defense against a psychopath isn't luck, it's self-awareness. If you don't know your weaknesses, they will. And once they do, they will use them to control you. Chapter 3. Who are the psychopaths? You think psychopaths are just serial killers? That they're locked up in some maximum security prison, far away from you? That they all wear creepy grins and have some kind of villain energy that makes them easy to spot? That's adorable. Here's the reality. Psychopaths are everywhere. They're in your workplace. They're in your social circle. They're even in your family. And the worst part, most people don't realize they've met one until it's too late. Thomas Erikson doesn't hold back in this chapter. He makes it painfully clear that psychopaths don't look like monsters. They look like charming, successful, well put together people. Some of them are CEOs, politicians, salespeople, influencers. Others are moochers, con artists, or people who make you feel like garbage just because they can. The common thread? They use other people like disposable objects. Psychopaths don't do hard labor. They don't grind. They don't struggle. They don't pay their dues. Why would they? That's what you're for. They leech off others, emotionally, financially, socially. They take credit for your work while doing next to nothing themselves. They never pick up the tab, but they're always happy to order the most expensive thing on the menu. They pretend to care about you, only to use whatever they learn to stab you in the back the moment it benefits them. And somehow, people still like them. That's the sickest part. These people don't just get away with their behavior. They get rewarded for it. They manipulate their way to the top, stepping over everyone else like it's a game. And the worst ones? They don't just climb the ladder, they convince you to help them do it. Erikson tells a chilling story about a young man at a university lecture who gave him an eerie, uncomfortable feeling. Something about the guy's dead-eyed stare, overly polished smile, and disturbingly smooth presence made Erikson uneasy. Turns out, that guy had stolen thousands of dollars, manipulated multiple women into self-destructive choices, and left an entire department in ruins, all without breaking a sweat. And guess what? He got away with it. He convinced the police it wasn't his fault. He lied so well that even when people knew he was guilty, they couldn't prove it. And after destroying an entire academic department, he landed a high-paying job in an IT firm, ready to ruin more lives. That's a psychopath. Not the Hollywood version, not the horror movie villain, a real-life, functioning, successful, manipulative, untouchable psychopath. And there are millions of them walking free, doing the exact same thing in different ways. Studies show that at least 2% of the population are full-blown psychopaths, but that number might be much higher. Some researchers believe up to 6% of men and 2% of women qualify as psychopaths. That means that if you live in a city with 1 million people, tens of thousands of them are psychopaths. Now let's do some real talk. How many people have you met in your life? Think about it. If you meet just a few hundred people a year, do you really think you've never encountered a psychopath? Of course you have. They might have been your boss, your coworker, your ex, your friend, even someone in your own family. Maybe they guilt-tripped you into doing things you didn't want to do. Maybe they made you feel crazy for noticing their red flags. Maybe they turned people against you while pretending to be the victim. Maybe they lied so smoothly that you still wonder if they were telling the truth. That's how they work. Erikson makes another terrifying point. Psychopaths do not change. This isn't a bad childhood thing. It's not just a phase. They are wired differently, and nothing will ever make them grow a conscience. They don't feel guilt. They don't feel shame. They know exactly what they're doing, and they just don't care. So what does that mean for you? It means that if you recognize a psychopath in your life, the only winning move is to get away. Stop trying to fix them. Stop making excuses. Stop thinking you'll be the one to change them. You won't. And the longer you stay, the more damage they will do. This chapter isn't here to make you paranoid, it's here to make you prepared. Because the truth is, you are already surrounded by psychopaths. The only question is whether you'll wake up to it before they destroy you. Key takeaway: psychopaths are everywhere, and they are not fixable. If you think you've never met one, it's because you didn't realize it at the time. The only way to win is to recognize them early and cut them out of your life before they ruin it. Chapter 4. Surrounded by idiots? This is how you get rid of them. You ever looked around and thought, how the hell are these people still functioning? You watch them make dumb decisions, fall for obvious scams, trust the absolute worst people, and then act surprised when everything goes to hell. It's painful to witness. But here's the real problem. They're not just making their own lives miserable, they're making yours worse too. Because guess who the psychopaths love to manipulate? The idiots. Psychopaths don't waste their time on people who see through them. No, they go straight for the gullible, the naive, the people pleasers, and the conflict avoiders. The ones who say, oh, maybe he didn't mean it that way, or, well, she's had a hard life, so I should be patient. And before you know it, you're drowning in someone else's bad decisions. Thomas Erikson isn't sugarcoating anything in this chapter. He's here to tell you that if you want to protect yourself from psychopaths, you need to stop surrounding yourself with people who are easy targets. Here's the brutal truth. Some people will never see the red flags. You can warn them, explain, even shove the evidence in their face, and they'll still make excuses for the person manipulating them. And do you know what that means for you? It means you're next, because psychopaths don't just target the weak, they target the people close to the weak. If they can't manipulate you directly, they'll do it through someone you care about. They'll use your friend to guilt trip you, use your coworker to spread lies about you, or use your family member to make you question your own judgment. And the worst part? The idiot in the middle will think they're helping. So what do? You cut them loose. Erikson makes it clear. If someone refuses to see reality, if they keep letting toxic people into their life, if they keep dragging you into their messes, you need to walk away. You are not their therapist. You are not their savior. And if you keep trying to help them while they run straight back into the arms of manipulators, you're just wasting your time. Now, this doesn't mean you need to be a heartless monster, but you do need to set boundaries. If someone keeps bringing drama, chaos, and manipulative people into your life, you have two choices. 1. Let them keep doing it and suffer the consequences. 2. Get the hell away before they drag you down with them. And yeah, it's harsh, but you know what's harsher? Letting a psychopath ruin your life just because someone else was too naive to stop them. Because here's the thing, psychopaths don't have to manipulate you directly. They can destroy you by manipulating the people around you. And if those people are easy to control, then guess what? You're already surrounded. Erikson emphasizes that the best way to protect yourself from manipulation is to only keep strong, self-aware, rational people in your circle. People who see the red flags, trust their instincts, call out toxic behavior instead of making excuses for it. Don't let guilt or emotional blackmail control them, because at the end of the day, manipulation only works if someone allows it to work. And if you're surrounded by people who keep falling for it, you're next. So the choice is yours. Do you keep the idiots around and hope for the best? Or do you finally start protecting yourself by choosing who gets access to your life? Because in a world full of manipulators, surrounding yourself with idiots is the fastest way to become a victim. Key takeaway. If you surround yourself with people who can't see manipulation, you will become a target. Cut the dead weight before they drag you down. Chapter 5. Manipulation is everywhere. Don't think you're being manipulated? Cute. That's exactly what a manipulator wants you to believe. Here's the cold, brutal truth. Manipulation is not some rare, once-in-a-lifetime event. It is happening to you right now. Maybe not in some grand, life-altering way, but in 1,000 tiny, seemingly insignificant interactions. And every single time you fail to recognize it, you become easier and easier to control. Thomas Erikson does not mince words in this chapter. He rips apart the comforting lie that manipulation is something only evil masterminds or sociopaths engage in. The reality? Everyone manipulates to some degree. You do it. I do it. Parents do it. Advertisers do it. Governments do it. Hell, even kids do it. Ever seen a toddler throw a tantrum until they get candy? That's manipulation in its purest form. Not all manipulation is bad. Some of it is social grease, a necessary part of human interaction. A doctor persuading you to eat better? A teacher convincing a student to study? That's positive manipulation. It's influence used for good. But the kind of manipulation Erikson warns you about? That's the dangerous kind. The kind that happens without you realizing it. The kind that twists reality until you don't even know you're being controlled. This is where things get dark. Erikson lays out how manipulation isn't just something that happens in big dramatic betrayals. It's in the small everyday interactions that chip away at your confidence, independence, and decision-making ability. That coworker who always gets you to cover their shifts but never returns the favor. That friend who makes you feel guilty every time you say no. That partner who subtly makes you doubt your own memory, emotions, and instincts. It's death by 1,000 paper cuts, and if you don't wake up to it, you'll find yourself trapped in a web you never even saw being spun. Erikson shares a chilling example of a husband who manipulated his wife out of tens of thousands of dollars under the guise of home renovations. He convinced her to hand over money multiple times, always promising it was for the house. But here's the kicker. There were no receipts, no records, no proof of any work being done. By the time she started asking questions, it was too late. The money was gone. And guess where it went? Poker, vacations, and dates with other women. And when she confronted him, he made her feel guilty for questioning him. That's what expert manipulators do. They don't just take from you, they make you feel bad for noticing. Erikson breaks down how manipulators use your own emotions against you. They push you into situations where you feel obligated, guilty, or confused. They use flattery to get you on their side, guilt trips to make you comply. Lies so subtle, you don't even realize they're being told. Gaslighting to make you question your own reality. And guess what? The people most vulnerable to this aren't the dumb ones. They're the nice ones, the helpful ones, the ones who don't like conflict, the kind of person who thinks, well, maybe they didn't mean it that way. No, stop. They meant it exactly that way. Erikson makes it clear that the only way to fight manipulation is to recognize it. You need to stop assuming everyone has good intentions. Some people don't. Some people are using you. And the second you start pretending otherwise, you're giving them exactly what they want. If you ever find yourself in a situation where something feels off, but you can't quite explain why, that's your warning sign. Manipulators thrive in the space between logic and emotion, where they can make you doubt yourself just enough to let them get away with it. And if you think you can argue with a manipulator and make them see reason, good luck with that. Manipulators don't care about reason, they care about control. And if arguing isn't working, they'll switch tactics, make themselves the victim, or turn others against you before you even realize what's happening. The only winning move? Stop playing their game. Stop explaining yourself to people who are twisting your words. Stop justifying your boundaries. Stop assuming that everyone operates with the same moral code you do, because newsflash, they don't. Erikson's message is simple and brutal. Manipulation is not going to stop. It's up to you to decide whether you're going to keep being a pawn or finally learn to protect yourself. Key takeaway: manipulation is everywhere. The only way to protect yourself is to recognize when it's happening and refuse to play along. If you don't, you're just another easy target. Chapter 6: What manipulation looks like. You think you'd see it coming? You think you'd recognize manipulation if it was happening to you? That's adorable. Manipulation is not some grand, dramatic betrayal that announces itself with flashing red lights and ominous music. It's subtle, it's quiet, and most of the time, you don't even realize it's happening until you're already caught. Thomas Erikson does not hold back in this chapter. He wants you to understand that manipulation is an art, and if you don't know the techniques, you are the canvas. Here's the hard truth. Manipulation works because it feels good at first. That's why people fall for it. Manipulators don't come at you aggressively, at least not at first. No, they start by making you feel special, understood, and valued. They mirror your personality, they give you compliments, they act like they have your best interests at heart, and before you know it, they own you. Erikson breaks it down using the 4 personality colors from his Surrounded by Idiots model: red, dominant, direct, powerful; yellow, charming, social, enthusiastic; green, passive, conflict avoidant, loyal; blue, analytical, logical, rule-oriented. Each personality type is vulnerable to different types of manipulation. And guess what? Manipulators know exactly which buttons to press. If you're a red, they'll challenge you, stroke your ego, and act like they respect your strength. If you're a yellow, they'll charm you, make you laugh, and flood you with compliments. If you're a green, they'll guilt trip you, play the victim, and make you feel responsible for their happiness. If you're a blue, they'll overload you with facts, twist logic, and make you second guess yourself. What's your weak spot? Because if you don't know it, a manipulator does. Erikson uses real-life examples that will make your stomach turn, like the husband who drained his wife's bank account under the pretense of home renovations. First, he convinced her to hand over the money for materials. Then, when the money ran out, he asked for more. Then the bills started arriving for the same things he had already been paid for. The truth? He had spent the money on poker, vacations, and other women, and when she confronted him, he flipped it around. He gaslit her. He made her feel guilty for questioning him. That's how manipulation works. It's never just about lying. It's about controlling the way you think. Psychopaths and manipulators use a playbook of tricks to keep you hooked. They know that if they come at you too aggressively, you'll run. So instead, they pull you in with charm, then keep you trapped with confusion, guilt, and self-doubt. Ever had someone do any of the following to you? Flatter you excessively, then suddenly withdraw? That's reinforcement and punishment. Make you feel guilty for setting boundaries. That's emotional blackmail. Change details of past conversations and make you doubt your own memory? That's gaslighting. Act like a victim so you feel obligated to help them? That's manipulation 101. If you don't see these tactics for what they are, you are the perfect victim. Erikson makes it painfully clear. Manipulators don't care about fairness. They don't care about truth. They care about control. And they don't just manipulate individuals. They manipulate entire groups. A skilled manipulator can walk into a workplace, a friend group, or a family gathering and turn people against each other like a puppeteer pulling strings. They do this through subtle, calculated moves, placing little doubts in people's minds, sowing seeds of jealousy or resentment, playing different people against each other so no one realizes what's happening. Before you know it, you're fighting battles that weren't even yours to begin with. And the worst part? Even if you catch on, it's already too late. Because by then, the manipulator has already planted enough doubt in everyone else's minds that if you call them out, you look like the crazy one. So what do you do? How do you stop it? Erikson's advice is simple, but brutal. Pay attention. Stop assuming people are always acting in good faith. Start recognizing manipulation for what it is. Because here's the truth. Manipulators don't stop manipulating. They just find easier targets. And if you don't wake up to what's happening, you're it. Key takeaway. Manipulation doesn't start with cruelty. It starts with charm. If you don't know your weak spot, a manipulator does, and they will use it against you. Chapter 7. The Dominant Red Psychopath. You think you've met an intimidating boss before? Someone who steamrolls through meetings, demands perfection, and never takes no for an answer? That's cute. But let's take a moment to differentiate between a red personality and a red psychopath, because one of them is just annoying, and the other is dangerous. A red person, as Thomas Erikson explains, is dominant, decisive, and driven. They push forward no matter what, take control in high-pressure situations, and don't waste time on emotional nonsense. They might be blunt, but their goal is efficiency, not destruction. Sure, they might shout at you in a meeting, but give them a few minutes and they'll invite you to lunch like nothing happened. They move fast, think fast, and expect the same from you. But a red psychopath? Oh, that's a whole different monster. A red psychopath doesn't just want control, they want to crush you. Unlike the typical red boss, who is just focused on results, the red psychopath enjoys watching people squirm. They publicly humiliate their employees, not because it improves performance, but because it gives them a sick thrill. They thrive on power, and the more they can make you feel small, the bigger they feel. Ever had a boss who made you feel like garbage just for fun? Criticized you in front of everyone, not to correct you, but just to make an example out of you? Took credit for your work while blaming you for every failure? Worked you to the bone while they did nothing but schmooze at high-end lunches? Yeah, that's a red psychopath. Unlike normal red leaders, who at least pull their own weight, red psychopaths don't actually work hard themselves. They delegate everything, disappear for long lunches, and then return just in time to crack the whip and demand results. And when things go wrong, They blame everyone but themselves. And here's the scariest part. They are extremely successful, because while normal people struggle with things like guilt, empathy, and fairness, psychopaths don't. They climb the corporate ladder faster than anyone else because they're willing to do whatever it takes, sabotaging, lying, and destroying anyone who gets in their way. Psychologist Kevin Dutton's research even shows that CEOs are one of the top professions for psychopaths. Why? Because psychopaths are hardwired to dominate. They are fearless, manipulative, and completely indifferent to the suffering of others. But maybe you're thinking, so what? I'll just stay out of their way. Yeah, good luck with that. A red psychopath doesn't just want to win, they want to break you in the process. If they think you're a threat, they'll destroy your reputation, turn your co-workers against you, and push you out the door before you even know what happened. And if you try to fight back, they'll double down, because unlike you, they don't care about consequences. So how do you survive working under a red psychopath? Erikson makes it clear, you don't. You escape. A normal red boss? Sure, you can negotiate with them, appeal to their logic, and prove your value. But a red psychopath? The more you engage, the more they see you as a toy to be played with. You don't win against them. You get away from them. And if you think you can handle them, if you think you're tough enough to stand your ground, that's exactly what they want you to think. Because the moment you hesitate, the moment you get comfortable, they will gut you like a fish. Key takeaway: a red boss might be tough, but a red psychopath is ruthless. If you work for one, don't try to outplay them. Get out before they destroy you. Chapter 8. The Charming Yellow Psychopath. You ever met someone so charming, so effortlessly likable that you couldn't help but be drawn to them? They walk into a room and suddenly everything feels lighter, funnier, more exciting. They talk and you're hooked. You laugh at their jokes, you nod at their stories, and before you know it, you trust them. That's how the yellow psychopath gets you. Unlike the red psychopath, who dominates through aggression and intimidation, the yellow psychopath doesn't need to scare you, they just need to make you like them. And that's easy for them. Thomas Erikson makes it clear in this chapter. Charm is a weapon, and in the hands of a psychopath, it's more dangerous than any knife or gun. A yellow psychopath thrives on attention. They are natural performers, animated, enthusiastic, fun to be around. They tell incredible stories, full of adventure and near-death experiences. They make people laugh. They make people feel important. And that's exactly why they're so damn dangerous. Because when someone makes you feel special, you let your guard down. Normal yellow personalities exaggerate because they love entertaining. But a yellow psychopath lies because they love control. They will fabricate entire histories, tell wild, unbelievable stories, and make grand promises, all without a single ounce of guilt. And if you ever call them out, they'll either gaslight you or turn the room against you. And don't think for a second that they feel bad about it. A normal yellow might get embarrassed if caught in a lie. A yellow psychopath? They double down, they spin even bigger lies, they manipulate harder, they make you feel like you're the crazy one for even questioning them, and people believe them every single time. Because unlike other psychopaths, yellow psychopaths don't operate through fear. They operate through popularity. They build themselves up as the life of the party, the most interesting person in the room, the one who's always got a bigger, crazier, better story than anyone else. And because people like them, they get away with everything. They'll cheat on their partners and convince them it was their fault, steal ideas at work and somehow come out looking like the genius, manipulate entire friend groups and make their victims look like the villains. Talk their way out of any consequence, no matter how obvious their guilt is. And here's the scariest part. If a yellow psychopath sets their sights on you, you won't even realize it's happening until it's too late. Erikson shares the story of Lars and Anna, a real-life nightmare of how a yellow psychopath slowly and methodically erased a man's entire social circle. Lars was popular, funny, full of energy. Everyone liked him. But when he started dating Anna, things changed. At first, Anna mirrored Lars. She laughed at all his jokes, loved the same things he did, and made him feel like he'd finally found someone who truly got him. But then, piece by piece, she started isolating him. She told him that his best friend, Simon, had been talking behind his back. Nothing major at first, just little things, believable things. Then the comments got worse. Simon says you're arrogant, that you dominate too many conversations, that people are getting tired of you. Lars was hurt, but he trusted Anna, so he believed her. Then, when he tried to reach out to Simon, Anna guilt-tripped him into not going. She made herself the victim, told him she was feeling insecure and unloved, and needed him to stay home with her instead. One by one, she cut Lars off from everyone who cared about him. Within a year, Lars had no friends left. He was completely dependent on Anna, and the entire time, she was lying about everything. Simon had never said a word against Lars. The whole thing was manufactured, and by the time Lars realized it, it was too late. That is the power of a yellow psychopath. They don't break you down with fear. They do it with charm, guilt, and manipulation so smooth you don't even see it happening. And when you finally wake up to the truth, they will already have replaced you with their next victim. Erikson makes one thing very clear. You cannot win against a yellow psychopath. They are too fast, too smooth, too good at flipping the narrative. The moment you try to expose them, they will twist the story so that you look like the villain and people will believe them, because that's the game they play and they never lose. So what's your best defense? Distance. The second you suspect you're dealing with a yellow psychopath, stop engaging, stop giving them attention, stop reacting to their nonsense, stop feeding their ego, because if they can't use you, they'll move on to someone else, and trust me, they will. Key takeaway: a yellow psychopath doesn't control you with fear, they control you with charm. The more you like them, the easier you are to manipulate. The only way to win is to stop playing their game. Chapter 9. The passive green psychopath. You probably think psychopaths are loud, aggressive, dominant, or maybe even charming manipulators. That they're always the ones in the center of attention, bending people to their will like a master puppeteer. But what if I told you that some of the most dangerous manipulators don't come at you with brute force or overwhelming charm, but with silence, with avoidance, with an innocent, "Oh, I didn't mean it that way"? That's the green psychopath. The green personality type, as Thomas Erikson describes it, is passive, calm, and avoids conflict at all costs. Normal greens are loyal, dependable, and incredibly resistant to change. They're the people who will stay in a job they hate for 30 years because quitting seems too stressful. They nod along to things they don't agree with just to keep the peace. But when a psychopath operates in this zone, that's where things get dangerous. Because a green psychopath doesn't manipulate with charm or dominance. They manipulate by doing nothing. Imagine this. You're in a friend group planning a vacation. One friend, let's call her Lisa, has agreed to take care of the hotel bookings. She's nodded her head, smiled, and reassured everyone that she's on top of it. Except she hasn't done a damn thing. The trip gets closer, everyone assumes the bookings are done, and then, BAM! At the last minute, you will find out there are no reservations. Lisa says something vague like, "Oh, I wasn't sure if we were really going, so I never confirmed anything." That's it. No apology, no accountability, just a meek shrug and some excuse about miscommunication. And now, the whole trip is ruined. Now, was Lisa being intentionally manipulative? Maybe, maybe not. But that's what makes green psychopaths so dangerous, because their passive manipulation leaves just enough doubt that you start second-guessing yourself. Maybe you weren't clear enough in your plans. Maybe she genuinely forgot. Maybe you're overreacting. No, what happened here is a classic green manipulation tactic, letting things spiral out of control just enough that they don't take the blame, but they still control the situation. And the real kicker, they do this all the time. Green psychopaths don't come at you with a knife. They let you stab yourself by withholding information, delaying decisions, dodging responsibility, and acting clueless when everything falls apart. They're the co-workers who never answer emails, the partners who forget to do their share of housework, the people who nod and agree but never follow through on anything. And when you finally call them out, "Oh, I didn't realize it was such a big deal. You never actually said it was urgent. I was waiting for the right moment." Suddenly, you're the bad guy for expecting them to act like a functioning human being. You're the one making a scene, overreacting, being too demanding, and that's how they win. Unlike a red or yellow psychopath who might dominate or charm their way into power, a green psychopath gains control by being so passive that everyone else is forced to pick up their slack. You start planning around them, anticipating their inaction, doing their work for them, until one day you realize they've been controlling the situation all along. And it doesn't stop with small things. Erikson shares a disturbing case study of Katie and Ed. Katie, a gentle, conflict-avoidant woman, meets Ed, a textbook green psychopath. He doesn't love bomb her like a yellow or control her outright like a red. Instead, he slowly, methodically, and passively takes over her life. First, he casually suggests meeting at her place instead of his. Then, he starts staying over more and more, until suddenly, he just lives there. Then, he starts subtly rearranging her home, making small changes so she feels less and less in control. And before she even realizes what's happening, she's financially supporting him, following his routine, and completely dependent on him. And what happens when she tries to push back? He doesn't argue, he doesn't fight, he just gives her the silent treatment. And because she hates conflict, she gives in. This is how a green psychopath traps you, not through overt control, but by making it so much easier to just go along with them than to fight back. By the time you realize you're in their web, you're already completely entangled. So how do you protect yourself from a green psychopath? Erikson's advice is simple but brutal. Stop making excuses for them. If someone constantly forgets to do things, believe that they don't care. If someone refuses to take responsibility, stop giving them second chances. If someone never makes decisions and always shifts the blame, cut them off before they make your life hell. Because here's the hard truth. Green psychopaths aren't clueless. They're calculated. And the more you let them get away with, the more power they gain over you. Key takeaway. A green psychopath controls through inaction. They let things fall apart, manipulate with silence, and make you feel like the bad guy for holding them accountable. Stop making excuses for them. Chapter 10. The meticulous blue psychopath. You think the dangerous ones are always loud? The ones who shout, manipulate through charm, or bulldoze their way through people? Cute. But let's talk about the ones you never see coming. The meticulous, calculated, coldly analytical blue psychopaths. Unlike the red, yellow, or green psychopaths, the blue psychopath doesn't care about controlling you emotionally. They don't use charm, they don't rely on intimidation, and they definitely don't bother with guilt trips. No, their game is entirely different. Their game is logic, precision, ruthless efficiency. A typical blue personality is already someone who loves rules, facts, and structure. They hate surprises, they distrust emotions, and they prefer systems over people. Blues thrive in clear, well-defined environments where everything can be measured, tracked, and analyzed. Now imagine a psychopath with that mindset. Imagine someone who sees you not as a person but as a variable in their grand equation. If you benefit their plan, you stay. If you don't, you're eliminated, coldly, efficiently, without a second thought. Unlike the explosive red psychopath or the charming yellow, the blue psychopath is the one you don't suspect. They're the quiet coworker who never speaks unless necessary, but somehow knows everything about everyone. They're the boss who never raises their voice, but systematically destroys your career. They're the partner who never yells, never fights, but slowly and methodically erases every piece of your identity. And the worst part? They always have a reason. Everything they do is justified. Everything is backed by logic. If they fire you, it's because the numbers say so. If they break up with you, it's because you didn't meet their standards. If they betray you, they'll hand you a spreadsheet showing exactly why it was the correct decision. They don't manipulate through emotions. They manipulate through cold, calculated reasoning that makes you question your own reality. Imagine a corporate setting. A blue psychopath doesn't backstab like a red or gossip like a yellow. No, they document. They log every tiny mistake you make. They record conversations. They collect data on you for months, maybe years, and then one day when they decide it's time to remove you, they pull out a flawless case against you, backed by cold, hard facts. You don't even see it coming. Erikson tells the story of George and Roger. George was the perfect blue employee, Meticulous, precise, never made mistakes. But when his new boss, Roger, arrived, he saw George as a threat. Instead of confronting George head-on, Roger started a slow, systematic takedown. He spread tiny, believable rumors that George was slipping. He changed meeting times without telling him, making him look irresponsible. He altered emails so it seemed like George was missing key information. Little by little, George started to doubt himself. His once flawless reputation crumbled. Co-workers believed the rumors. He became isolated, paranoid, exhausted, and when the time was right, Roger fired him with a perfectly documented case. That is the blue psychopath's power. They don't attack, they erase you from the system. And let's talk about relationships. A red psychopath might control you through aggression. A yellow will charm you into submission. A green will slowly trap you through passivity. But a blue makes you question your own reality. Imagine being in a relationship with someone who tracks every dollar you spend and demands receipts, corrects every tiny detail in every conversation, so you start doubting your own memory, criticizes you so subtly, so logically, that you don't even realize you're being torn apart. They won't scream at you. They won't gaslight you the way a yellow psychopath would. No, their approach is far more surgical. They make you feel small, inadequate, imperfect, not by yelling, not by manipulation, but by simply presenting facts. And if you ever try to leave, they'll hand you a detailed, bullet-pointed list of every way you failed them, and you'll believe it. Because their power isn't emotional, their power is logic. So how do you defend yourself? Erikson is blunt. The only way to beat a blue psychopath is to stop playing by their rules. Don't argue with them. You'll lose. They have more data than you. Don't try to prove your side. They've already built a case against you. Don't try to make them see reason. Their reason is the only one that matters. The only move? Refuse to engage. Walk away before they dismantle you piece by piece. Because here's the truth. You will never win a war against a blue psychopath. They will always have the receipts. Key takeaway. A blue psychopath won't manipulate you emotionally. They will dismantle you logically. If you try to argue, you'll lose. Your only defense is to refuse to play their game. Chapter 11. How a psychopath manipulates a red person. You think you're too tough to be manipulated? That nobody can push you around because you're always in control? That's exactly what makes you the perfect target. If you're a red personality, you thrive on power, efficiency, and getting things done. You're competitive, assertive, and impossible to intimidate. You don't sit around worrying about how people feel. You push forward, make decisions, and expect others to keep up. And a psychopath loves that about you, because you're predictable, because they know exactly how to use your own strength against you. Think about it. Where does a boxer punch? Where it hurts the most. A manipulator doesn't come at you head on. They study you, find your weak spots, and hit where you least expect it. And with a red person, your weak spot is your own ego. You believe you can't be fooled, so you never stop to check if you are. And that is dangerous. A red psychopath steamrolls over people through intimidation, but a psychopath manipulating a red victim, they're playing a much smarter game. They don't fight you, they redirect you, they let you do the dirty work. Imagine a workplace scenario. You're a high-powered, no-nonsense boss. You don't have time for politics, you just want results. Enter the psychopath. Your new employee, assistant, or business partner, they watch, they wait, and then they plant a seed. Hey, did you hear what the finance guy said about you in the meeting? Marketing thinks you're getting too aggressive. They're saying you don't listen to feedback. I overheard the CEO questioning whether you can handle this big project. Boom. That's it. The psychopath doesn't need to argue. They just need to get you angry. And once you're angry, you're doing exactly what they want. You start yelling, demanding control, making moves to prove your dominance. You fire people, restructure teams, push harder, and guess what? The psychopath is watching the chaos with a smile. Because now, they don't have to do anything. You're tearing things apart all by yourself. And if someone calls you out, if someone says, hey, maybe you're being manipulated, you won't believe them, because that's the real genius of manipulating a red personality. You think you're too smart to be played, and the moment you think that, you already have been. Thomas Erikson shares the story of Mike and Pernilla. Mike is a classic manipulator, and Pernilla, a red powerhouse. Strong, smart, no nonsense. Exactly the kind of person who thinks they can't be fooled. Mike doesn't try to dominate Pernilla. Instead, he feeds her ego. He praises her for the very things people criticize her for. You know, most people don't have the guts to say things the way you do. It's refreshing. I admire how you don't care what people think. More people should be like that. And just like that, Pernilla lets her guard down. The moment a red person feels respected, they stop questioning motives. That's where the psychopath wins. And when the moment is right, the psychopath starts taking advantage. They shift blame onto others. They use your aggression to eliminate their enemies. They manipulate your impatience so you don't double check their lies. And by the time you realize it, they've been using you as their personal wrecking ball. So how do you stop it? You have to do the one thing that red personalities hate to do: slow down. Psychopaths thrive on your impulsiveness, your confidence, your unwillingness to question yourself. If you want to beat them, you have to start checking your own blind spots. When someone flatters you, ask yourself, what do they gain from this? When someone feeds you a negative information, pause and think, why are they telling me this? When you feel an urge to react instantly, force yourself to wait, because if you don't, you'll be played like a puppet. Key takeaway: if you're a red personality, your ego is your biggest weakness. A psychopath doesn't overpower you. They let you destroy yourself. Chapter 12. How a psychopath manipulates a yellow person. If you're a yellow personality, you live for fun, excitement, and social energy. You thrive on interaction, being around people, bouncing ideas, making others laugh. The worst thing in the world: being ignored, being isolated, being left out. And guess what? That's exactly how a psychopath destroys you. Unlike reds, who can be baited with ego, or greens, who can be crushed under pressure, yellows are manipulated by isolation and control over their social world. A psychopath doesn't need to trick you into trusting them. That part is easy. You're naturally trusting, optimistic, and full of energy. You assume people are good, that they mean well, that everyone wants to enjoy life as much as you do. And that's your biggest weakness. A psychopath doesn't come in like a storm. They don't dominate you, and they don't force you into submission. Instead, they make you depend on them. They cut you off from your friends one by one until they're the only person you have left. And by the time you notice, it's too late. Think about it. You need people to function. You need conversation, laughter, and ideas. Without it, you shrink. You lose energy. Your world becomes smaller, and the psychopath wants to be the only source of that energy for you. Here's how they do it. First, they mirror you perfectly. They laugh at your jokes, love your stories, match your energy. They never criticize you, at least not at first. They make you feel like you finally found someone who truly understands you. Then, they start cutting people out. It starts with small things. Did you hear what your friend said about you the other day? So weird, right? I don't know. I just get a weird vibe from them. It's just strange how they never fully support you, don't you think? Just enough to plant doubt. Then they escalate. They create drama, suggest that your friends are jealous of you, that they talk behind your back. They fake crises. Every time you plan to meet someone, they suddenly need you. They guilt trip you, saying you don't care about them if you spend time with others. And before you realize what's happening, your social world shrinks. You stop reaching out to friends because it feels too complicated, too stressful. You start feeling like maybe they don't really care about you after all. And when you finally wake up and realize you're alone, the psychopath is already in full control. Erikson shares a brutal case study of Lars and Anna. Lars, a classic yellow, was popular, well-liked, and full of energy. When he met Anna, he thought he had found the perfect match. Someone who laughed at his jokes, shared his sense of adventure, and loved being social. But what Lars didn't realize was that Anna was slowly, methodically isolating him. She started by questioning his friendships. Nothing major at first, just little comments that made him second-guess people he had trusted for years. Then, every time Lars made plans, something would happen. She accidentally booked a romantic dinner the same night he was supposed to meet friends. She had an emotional breakdown right before he was about to leave. She insisted she was sick and needed him to stay home with her. Lars, being a kind and caring person, stayed, and slowly, bit by bit, his world shrank. A year later, he barely had any friends left. His once packed weekends? Gone. His excitement, his humor, his energy? Diminished. And then came the next phase, the psychological attack. Anna turned his personality against him. She told him he was too self-centered, that he talked about himself too much. She told him his jokes were insensitive, that people secretly hated them. She made him feel like everything that made him unique was actually a flaw, and the worst part, he believed it, because when a yellow loses their social world, they lose themselves. And that's the end game. That's how a psychopath breaks you. So, how do you protect yourself? First, recognize the signs. If someone constantly questions your friendships, be suspicious. If someone makes it difficult for you to see other people, ask why. If someone makes you feel like you're the problem, take a step back and check if that's actually true. Second, stay connected. A psychopath wins when you become dependent on them. Your best defense? Make sure you never rely on just one person for emotional support. Keep friends, keep family, keep connections, because the moment you cut everyone off, you're trapped. Key takeaway: a yellow person is manipulated through isolation. The moment you let someone control your social world, you lose your power. Stay connected, or you'll end up completely at their mercy. Chapter 13: How a Psychopath Manipulates a Green Person. You ever tried to have a direct conversation with a green person? No? Then let me explain what it's like. It's like trying to nail jelly to a wall. You ask them what they want for dinner, and they'll tell you, "Oh, whatever you feel like." You ask them if they want to go out, and they say, "I don't mind, up to you." You ask them what their opinion is, and they nod politely and agree with the last thing they heard. Now, that might sound harmless, but what if I told you that this exact personality type is the easiest to manipulate? Not because they're dumb, not because they don't see what's happening, but because they will do anything to avoid confrontation. And psychopaths? They love that. A green person is peaceful, reserved, and deeply conflict avoidant. They are the masters of neutrality, always sitting on the fence, refusing to pick a side. That's great in a world where everything runs smoothly, but when they cross paths with a manipulator, it's game over, because psychopaths thrive on control. And green people, they hate being controlled, but they hate confrontation even more. So here's how a psychopath breaks them down. First, they test the waters. They criticize them lightly, just enough to see if they fight back. Spoiler alert, they don't. They push a little further, maybe make a small decision for them, see if they protest. They don't. They start shaping the green person's reality, making choices for them, dismissing their preferences. And what does the green person do? Nothing. Not because they don't notice, they notice everything. They just choose silence over conflict, and that's where the psychopath wins. Think about it. If you never push back, how do you expect anyone to stop pushing you around? Thomas Erikson gives a chilling example of Katie and Ed. Katie is a classic green, kind, passive, avoids conflict at all costs. Ed? A textbook psychopath. When they first met, Ed was charming, decisive, and seemed to take care of everything. Katie, who hates making decisions, thought she had finally met someone she could rely on. She didn't even notice how quickly he moved in, rearranged her life, and started making choices for her. One day, Katie realized she hadn't picked a single restaurant, TV show, or weekend plan in months, so she finally stood up for herself. She told Ed she wanted to spend the weekend with her friends. What did Ed do? He didn't yell, he didn't argue, he just looked disappointed. He sighed, looked down, maybe shook his head a little. And Katie? She caved instantly. Why? Because greens can't handle making people unhappy. They would rather sacrifice their own needs than deal with even a drop of conflict. And Ed? He knew it. So little by little, he took everything from her, her opinions, her decisions, her self-worth, and when she finally realized what was happening, she was too scared to leave, because greens don't like change, and they hate confrontation even more. That's the real trap. It's not that they don't see the manipulation, it's that they won't do anything about it. So how do you protect yourself? If you're a green, you need to accept a harsh truth. Your silence is not keeping the peace, it's letting manipulators win. Start saying no, even when it's uncomfortable. Stop apologizing for things that aren't your fault. Understand that avoiding conflict doesn't stop bad things from happening. It just lets them happen without resistance. Because the longer you avoid standing up for yourself, the easier it is for someone else to take control. Key takeaway: a green person is manipulated by their fear of confrontation. If you don't speak up, psychopaths will walk all over you. Silence is not safety, it's surrender. Chapter 14. How a psychopath manipulates a blue person. You think you're immune to manipulation because you're logical, detailed, and always prepared? Because you keep records, double-check facts, and don't fall for charm or flattery. Cute. But let's talk about what happens when someone weaponizes your own strengths against you. Blues are the hardest personality type to manipulate, which is why, when a psychopath does succeed, the destruction is slow, calculated, and absolute. A normal blue is structured, meticulous, and fact-driven. They write everything down, remember what was said, and spot inconsistencies instantly. If you try to lie to them, they'll cross-reference, pull out receipts, and bury you in cold, hard facts. They don't operate on gut feelings, they trust the numbers. That's why a standard manipulation technique, a lie, an emotional guilt trip, a power play, won't work on a blue. They won't fall for it. So what does a psychopath do? They change the entire game. A psychopath doesn't fight a blue's logic. They overload it. They throw so much confusion, so many conflicting details, and so many shifting expectations that even a blue starts to question their own reality. Imagine this. You work with someone who constantly changes deadlines, alters documents, and insists they never said things you know they said. You show them an email? That's not what I meant. You bring up a meeting note? That was just a draft. You point out an inconsistency? You must be confused. And because you're blue, you go back and check again, and again, and again, until suddenly you're doubting yourself. That's gaslighting, and it works because blues trust logic over emotion. You think, I know I'm right, but what if I missed something? So you double check, triple check until you're exhausted, buried under details, and completely disoriented. And the psychopath? They just sit back and watch. A blue's other Achilles' heel? Their obsession with perfection. Blues don't like half-baked work, messy execution, or good enough solutions. They want things done correctly, properly, with no room for error. A psychopath exploits this ruthlessly. They assign impossible tasks with unclear expectations. They criticize details that don't actually matter just to throw you off balance. They make you feel like you're never quite good enough, like there's always one more thing you should have done. And because you're blue, you take the bait. You stay late. You work harder. You correct things that don't need correcting. You drive yourself into the ground, while the psychopath watches from a distance, completely unfazed. And don't think relationships are any different. Imagine dating someone who twists your logic into knots, undermines your expertise, and makes you feel like a fool without ever raising their voice. They challenge everything you say. They subtly make fun of your meticulous nature, acting like you're overreacting. They tell you, you're so rigid you need to loosen up, and before you know it, you've stopped trusting your instincts. Erikson tells the story of George and Roger. George was an extremely competent, detail-oriented blue. He worked as a financial controller and never missed a thing. Enter Roger, the new boss, a psychopath who hated how competent George was. At first, Roger tried praising George to win him over. Didn't work. Then, he tried criticizing him. Also didn't work. So Roger did something worse. He started changing information behind George's back. He moved meetings without telling him, then blamed George for missing them. He altered reports so that numbers didn't match up, making George look incompetent. He spread small, believable rumors that George was slipping, just enough to create doubt. Little by little, George's perfect record started to crack, and the more he tried to defend himself, the more it looked like he was making excuses. Until one day, he was fired. And that's how a psychopath takes down a blue. So how do you fight back? First, trust your records, not their words. If someone constantly twists reality, don't argue. Document everything. Psychopaths thrive on confusion, but they can't erase hard proof. Second, stop chasing their approval. A psychopath's favorite trick? Making you feel like you're never good enough. Don't fall for it. Perfection is a trap. Learn when good enough is actually good enough. Third, recognize when someone is draining your energy. If someone is constantly making you second guess yourself, constantly moving the goalpost, or constantly creating unnecessary problems, cut them off. Because trust me, they know exactly what they're doing. Key takeaway: a blue person is manipulated by confusion and self-doubt. A psychopath won't lie to them outright. They'll bury them in so many conflicting details that even a meticulous blue starts questioning their own reality. Your best defense? Trust your records, not their words. Chapter 15. Common manipulation techniques. You think you're too smart to be manipulated? That's cute. You, my friend, are walking around in a world filled with trained predators and you don't even know it. You assume that just because you're aware of the concept of manipulation, you can't be fooled. Wrong. Because manipulation isn't just about getting you to do something you don't want to do. It's about making you think it was your idea in the first place. It's about controlling you without you even realizing it. And psychopaths, they're playing chess while you're still trying to figure out how to roll the dice. So let's talk about how they do it. Let's break down the weapons of psychological warfare that psychopaths use to twist your mind, control your emotions, and turn you into a puppet without you even realizing the strings are there. First up, arbitrary positive reinforcement. This is where the psychopath gives you just enough validation to keep you coming back for more, but never consistently. One day, they're praising you like you're the smartest, most attractive, most incredible person on earth. The next, they go silent, they ignore you, they withhold affection. And what do? You chase them. You wonder what you did wrong. You work harder to get back in their good graces because now your brain is addicted to their approval, just like a junkie waiting for their next hit. And just like that, they own you. Next, we've got negative reinforcement. Here's how this one works. They stop doing something you don't like when you start doing what they want. They ignore you until you apologize for something that wasn't your fault. They criticize everything you do until you cave and start doing things their way. They withhold affection, attention, or kindness until you stop questioning them. And your brain, in its desperate attempt to avoid pain, starts training itself to please them at all costs. Now let's talk about the silent treatment. Oh, this one's evil. Most people think of the silent treatment as childish, but in the hands of a psychopath, it's psychological torture. Imagine this. You're in a relationship, everything is fine, until one day they just go cold. They don't yell, they don't argue, they don't explain, they just act like you don't exist. At first you're confused, then anxious, then desperate. You try to fix things, to make them talk, to make them look at you. And when they finally break their silence, you will do anything to make sure it doesn't happen again. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how they break you. Up next, blame shifting. This one is a classic. No matter what happens, it's your fault. They cheat. You weren't giving them enough attention. They lie. You made them feel like they had to. They explode in rage. You provoked them. And before you know it, you're apologizing for things you didn't even do. You see how this works? Then there's gaslighting. This is where a psychopath rewrites reality in real time and makes you doubt your own memory, your own perceptions, your own sanity. I never said that. They did. You're remembering it wrong. You're not. You always overreact. No, you don't. And after a while, you stop trusting your own brain. You start relying on them to tell you what's real. And now, they have total control. Want more? Let's throw in some triangulation. Psychopaths love this one. They bring in a third person, an ex, a coworker, a friend, to make you feel insecure. They compare you to someone else. They create fake competition just to keep you on edge. And you fight harder for their attention. You try to outdo the imaginary rival. You turn against people who are never actually a threat. And the psychopath, they sit back and watch the chaos they created. But here's the real kicker. They don't just use one of these techniques. They use all of them at the same time. Think about it. What happens when someone gaslights you, blames you for everything, gives you the silent treatment, dangles affection just out of reach, and makes you feel like there's always someone else who could take your place? You break. You lose yourself. You turn into a version of yourself you don't even recognize. And that's the goal. So how do you fight back? First, wake up. If someone's behavior makes you feel like you're constantly on edge, confused, guilty, or chasing their approval, you are being manipulated, period. Second, stop reacting. Manipulation only works when you engage with it, when you defend yourself, when you explain, when you argue. You're playing their game. Stop playing. Third, walk away. You cannot negotiate with a psychopath. You cannot reason with them. You cannot fix them. The only way to win? Leave. Because trust me, they know exactly what they're doing. Key takeaway: psychopaths don't just manipulate you, they train you. They break you down, rewire your brain, and make you dependent on them. Your best defense: recognize the game, refuse to play, and walk the hell away. Chapter 16: Everyday Manipulation and How to Handle It. Let's be real. Manipulation is everywhere. It's in your workplace, in your relationships, in that passive-aggressive text from your mom, and in the sales pitch that made you buy that ridiculously overpriced gym membership you've never used. You are being manipulated every single day by people who want your time, your money, your attention, and your compliance. But here's the worst part. You've done it too. Yeah, I said it. You're not innocent. You've sweet-talked your way out of trouble, exaggerated the truth to get what you wanted, or used guilt to sway someone's decision. Maybe you did it unconsciously. Maybe you didn't mean harm, but guess what? It was still manipulation. So let's stop pretending that manipulation only comes from bad people. It's a part of human nature. The real problem? When it's used systematically, maliciously, and without regard for others. Now, there are two types of manipulators you'll encounter daily. The clueless manipulators. People who don't even realize they're doing it. They're just wired that way. They guilt trip, they exaggerate, they use emotional blackmail, but they genuinely think they're just communicating. The strategic manipulators, these are the ones you really need to watch out for. They know exactly what they're doing. Every word, every move, every silence is designed to control you. And if you don't learn how to counteract this, you will be a puppet for the rest of your life. So how do you handle everyday manipulation? First, identify it. Your boss keeps shifting deadlines and blaming you for not keeping up. Manipulation. Your friend suddenly acts cold and distant after you say no to a favor. Manipulation. Your partner gives you the silent treatment until you apologize for something you didn't even do. Manipulation. Wake up. The moment you recognize that someone is trying to control you without your consent, you've already won half the battle. Second, resist. This is where it gets uncomfortable, because manipulators thrive on compliance. The moment you stop playing along, they lose their power. When someone guilt trips you, don't engage. Let them sit with their own emotions. When someone gaslights you, stick to what you know is true. Don't let them rewrite reality. When someone punishes you with silence, use that silence to move on, not to beg for their attention. You have every right to defend yourself from manipulation. You don't owe anyone your submission. Third, walk away if necessary. Here's the brutal truth. Some people will never change. You can resist, you can call them out, you can set boundaries, but some manipulators will double down. They will escalate. And if that happens, get outside. That toxic friend, cut them off. That manipulative partner, leave. That workplace that drains you dry, quit. If someone refuses to respect your boundaries, you owe them nothing. The only way to truly win against a manipulator, refuse to play their game. Key takeaway: manipulation is a daily reality. The only way to protect yourself is to recognize it, resist it, and, when necessary, walk away from those who refuse to respect you. Chapter 17. What if nothing works? Let's be brutally honest. If you're listening to this chapter, things have already gone too far. You've spotted the manipulation, you've called it out, you've set boundaries, and yet here you are, still drowning in a psychological war zone where your sanity is being chewed up and spit out. So now you're asking, what if nothing works? Here's your answer. Get up and go. Run, leave, escape. Exit the game before it consumes you whole. You don't argue with a tornado. You don't try to reason with a wildfire. You don't negotiate with a psychopath. Because if you're dealing with one, you're not dealing with a person. You're dealing with a predator. Still think you can fix them? You can't. There is no therapy, no intervention, no deep, meaningful conversation that will suddenly make them wake up one day and think, wow, I've been terrible, I should change. That fantasy, that's your empathy talking. That's your conscience trying to project itself onto someone who doesn't have one. They don't love you. They love controlling you. They love the reaction, the drama, the suffering. You are a resource to them. No different from a credit card, a punching bag, or a tool they can sharpen and discard when it wears down. So here's the hard truth. If you're looking for a way to win against them, there isn't one. The only way to stop them from draining your soul, your finances, your energy, and your self-worth, remove yourself from the equation entirely. If this sounds extreme, good. It should, because psychopaths don't stop. You think you can hurt them back? Expose them, take them down, they're 3 steps ahead of you. They've already whispered their version of reality to your friends, your family, your co-workers. While you were trying to survive, they were playing chess with your entire life. If you try to expose them, you'll be painted as the crazy one. If you try to fight back, they'll destroy you with a smile. They don't feel shame, they don't feel remorse, and they sure as hell don't feel guilt. So what do? You leave. You stop justifying, defending, explaining. You stop waiting for them to change. You cut them out, block their number, move if you have to. You remove every possible way they could ever reach you again. And then, here's the hardest part. You do not go back, ever, because you will be tempted. You will doubt yourself. They will reel you in with charm, fake apologies, crocodile tears, or outrage at how you've abandoned them. That's just another trick. They don't miss you. They miss controlling you. Psychopaths don't change, but you can. So this is it, your red pill moment. Will you wake up, face reality, and walk away? Or will you stay trapped in their game, hoping for an ending that will never come? Key takeaway. The only way to win against a psychopath is to refuse to play. Cut them off. Disappear. Do not look back. They will never change, but you can. Conclusion. If you've made it this far, congratulations. You've officially left the world of blissful ignorance and entered the harsh, cold reality of human manipulation. There is no going back. You can't unsee this. You can't pretend that psychopaths are just movie villains, or that manipulation is something that only happens to other people. Because now you know. You've been played before, and if you're not careful, you will be played again. Look around. Think about your life. Your relationships, your workplace. Who's been pulling your strings? That one friend who always manages to guilt you into things. That boss who takes credit for your work while subtly making you doubt yourself. That partner who somehow convinced you that all their toxic behavior was your fault. Yeah, that wasn't an accident. That was strategy. And the most terrifying part? They will do it again and again, to you, to the next person, to everyone they come into contact with, because that's how they function. You can't fix them. You can't make them see reason. They don't care. So now that you know how the game works, you have 2 choices. 1, pretend you didn't listen to this summary. Go back to life as usual. Assume you're immune. Assume that just because you know about manipulation, you can't fall for it. Let your ego keep you blind. And then, when it happens again, when you find yourself drained, confused, and controlled, you'll wonder why you didn't pay closer attention. 2, do something about it. Pay attention, spot the tactics, call out the red flags. Stop making excuses for people who manipulate, lie, and twist reality to suit their own needs. And most importantly, get the hell away from them before they destroy you, because you can't win against a psychopath. Not by arguing, not by reasoning, not by hoping they'll change. The only way to win is to refuse to play their game. And if you think you're safe, you're not. You are surrounded. Every workplace, every friend group, every social circle has one. Maybe they're loud, maybe they're quiet, maybe they're charming, maybe they're calculating, maybe they act like your best friend, maybe they act like your boss, maybe they act like your soulmate, but they're there. And now you have a choice. Will you see them for what they are, or will you let them destroy you? The summary you've just listened to is not just a summary, it's a weapon. It's the difference between being a victim and being someone who sees the knife before it sinks into their back. And if you really want to protect yourself, Buy the damn book, read it again, highlight it, memorize it, because the next time a manipulator crosses your path, they won't hesitate. And if you're not prepared, you'll never see it coming.